There are still 4 weeks to go, and when asked on the steps of Downing Street what could happen, Boris Johnson replied, "Let's see, I hope so." In the past 24 hours, surge testing and vaccinations have been announced in areas of concern in England to combat the spread of the Indian variant. Our political correspondent, Libby Vina, has our report.
Are we still on track for the 21st of June, Prime Minister?
Let's see, we hope so.
We hope so, says the Prime Minister on unlocking next month, having told his own MPs that he was even more optimistic than last week about sticking to the roadmap.
I can leave you a test for everybody in the house.
But much still depends on the success of surge testing. In Nuneaton, they're now knocking on doors to test for the spread of the Indian variant, concerned that 1 in 3 people have no symptoms.
What will be a worry is if we start to see increase exponentially in the numbers of cases of this particular variant. And that is why we've acted really quickly to make sure that if we can get as many people as possible tested.
Other areas where both testing and vaccinations are being stepped up include Bedford, Burnley, Hounslow, Kirklees, Leicester and North Tyneside. Ministers appear hopeful that such measures will be enough to contain the spread of the virus.
The roadmap very much on track. Of course, we're at the 3rd unlock at the moment. We just Monday passed. 21st of June is when we look to the 4th. So far, nothing in the data. If anything, it looks reasonably positive.
Labour insist that the effects of unlocking this week need to be closely examined first.
I think what they need to do is what they said they were going to do, which was to follow the data and follow the advice, and not start telling us now what they're going to be doing at the end of June when there hasn't been the proper analysis yet of just how infectious the Indian variant is and how dangerous it is. We still don't know yet.
This is your test. Take it.
Even scientists are unsure about just how quickly the Indian variant is transmitted.
If you think we're in a race to immunise our population with the virus, but we can't go much faster because of supply constraints, but if the virus can transmit faster, then of course it can affect many more people quicker.
For now, the government appears increasingly confident that this is a race it can win. Libby Vina, ITV News, Westminster.
Well, Professor Linda Bald is a public health expert and regular guest on this programme and joins me now. Linda, great to talk to you. Is surge testing an effective weapon against local outbreaks? The government seems to be relying on it pretty heavily.
Maybe an over-reliance on it, but surge testing or rapid testing and case finding is a tried and tested approach. So we know in a number of other countries, even earlier on in the pandemic, they were testing many more people than we were. So when you've got areas you're concerned about, the key thing is to find the cases. So I think the door-to-door is good. It's not enough just to ask people to come forward, but we have seen a good response, particularly in those areas of the north of England, for people to take up the testing. The one final point I'd make on that is that, of course, if you do find positive cases, they need to self-isolate. And that's a part of the UK's response, which I think is still not optimum in terms of the financial support available to people.
Right, and do you share the Prime Minister's optimism that the wider reopening of June the 21st can go ahead?
I think we are in a tricky situation at the moment in some parts of the country. I mean, the number of cases has gone down significantly. We've now got under 1,000 people in hospital, which is fantastic. But there are some small red flags. Up here in Glasgow, we have seen a number of people going into hospital, younger people, since the cases started to rise in the west of Scotland, and that's causing worry here. So I think it is really very much about the data. We'll have a much better sense of where we are in about 2 weeks, but I think it's over-optimistic to assume that things are largely going to be back to normal by the 21st of June. We're still going to need some mitigation and some measures, and that's only a month away, so it's really very soon.
Yeah, of course, data is absolutely key, and it does appear today that there was a delay in test and trace notifying councils in some areas where the Indian variant is a problem of the number of positive cases in their area. How much would that have hampered local action against its spread?
This has been an issue throughout the pandemic, this mismatch between a largely centralised test and trace system and local directors of public health and public health teams, and maybe too much investment in the central aspects and not enough in the local aspects. So I was concerned to hear that a number of councils one of two things: hadn't received the information from the system that there were positive cases in their area, or alternatively, the individuals themselves hadn't received the message to then log on and provide their personal details. And the reason why that's worrying is because any delay in that means that you can't then get to their contacts and encourage them to be tested. I don't think it's fair to say this is the whole reason why we have a variant of concern in those communities. But even a few hundred cases, which it looks like it has been, is problematic. And we really need to sort out this central local relationship as we emerge from the pandemic.
Linda, very clear as always. Thank you very much. It was one of the most explosive interviews of all time, and now, more than 25 years later, a report into whether Panorama's interview with Princess Diana was obtained deceitfully is about to be published. The interview, which took place in 1995, was famous for the princess's reaction when asked about her marriage. Let's take a look.
Well, anything good I ever did, nobody ever said a thing. Never said well done or was it okay. But if I tripped up, which invariably I did, because I was new at the game, a ton of bricks came down on me.
So you were isolated?
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Do you think Mrs. Parker Bowles was a factor in the breakdown of your marriage?
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
But it's how the BBC's Martin Bashir secured the interview which is under scrutiny. He's accused of using underhand tactics to secure his worldwide exclusive. The former Director General of the BBC, Lord Hall, is also under scrutiny over the role he played. He's facing claims he helped cover up the scandal, having led a previous internal inquiry that found Bashir was an honest man. To give us an idea of what the report will cover, I am joined by our royal editor, Chris Shipp. Extraordinary still watching that interview back now. This is going to be a difficult moment for the BBC this afternoon.
Yeah, potentially huge. Like, everyone remembers the interview. It changed the course of royal history. It was watched by 23 million people when it aired in 1995. But a retired judge has spent the last few months looking into how Martin Bashir secured the interview. Now, there's a chap called Matt Wiesler. He was a graphic designer for the Panorama programme at the time. He says that he was asked by Martin Bashir to make up some fake bank statements. The allegation is that Martin Bashir used those bank statements to show Diana and her brother Charles Spencer that people that are on their staff were being paid to leak stories to the tabloids. Now, Charles Spencer very much feels like, I think, that he owes it to his sister. He's been pushing for this investigation. In fact, we've got a picture here that he put out on Twitter this morning of him and his sister, and he wrote the words, "Some bonds go back a very long way." He is going to be looking at this report which comes out this afternoon very carefully indeed.
And what about Martin Bashir himself, the man at the centre of all of this? What is the situation with him?
Well, he was rehired by the BBC in 2016 as their religion editor for BBC News. Now, last Friday, the BBC said that Martin Bashir had stepped down from that role on health grounds. Now, he has had a triple heart bypass. He has had complications because of COVID. But they announced it on the very same day that Lord Dyson, the retired judge, said that he'd completed his inquiry. What I think is perhaps the biggest question is this: will the report draw a link between the interview in 1995 and her death in 1997? Not that the BBC caused it, but because it triggered a series of events, like the divorce, like losing her security, that meant Princess Diana ended up in that car with a drunk driver in Paris in 1997.
Fascinating. Thank you. The way we book train tickets, read timetables and how much we're charged for tickets is all set to change. Today, the government announced the creation of what it's calling Great British Railways, an overhaul of our rail system. The Transport Secretary says it will simplify a complicated system, so how will it work? Private contracts will replace the old franchise system. Flexible season tickets will be introduced. A 2 days per week commute from Liverpool to Manchester could save you £220. And operators will be incentivised to run cleaner services that are on time. Martha Fairley is at Manchester Piccadilly Station. It sounds pretty good. Big changes, Martha. Talk us through the detail.
Yes, well, this new state-owned body, Great British Railways, or GBR, will take over from Network Rail, which is the current track operator, but it will also do so much more than Network Rail does. It will take control of the sale of all tickets in England. meaning an end to that baffling system when you turn up at the station and find multiple operators offering a variety of fares. It will also take control of timetables, and those flexi season tickets that you mentioned will start being seen by passengers as early as next month. Now, passengers in Brighton have said that there's plenty that they'd like to see improving.
For a long time, I think people have been getting upset, not just about the price, the rise in price, but the fact that the service is not meeting the demands.
We pay quite a lot of money on the trains and they're always late, especially from here to London. It's a terrible line, so hopefully there'll be some improvements coming.
If they can get any money off, or because I know how expensive it is, so yeah, it will be good for passengers.
Now, how we buy tickets will also change with a move towards contactless or digital ticketing using smartphones. And Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says the aim is to simplify a system that's just too complicated.
Well, the great thing with this simplification is we'll have Great British Railways running all of the track, the ticketing, the timetabling. In doing so, it's going to mean that people have a single organisation to go to.
Now, Grant Shapps says he doesn't want to go back to the old days of British Rail, and there will still be some involvement of private companies. They'll have contracts to run the trains on behalf of Great British Railways. But overall accountability should improve, and there'll be an end to those arguments where we don't know who's in charge or who's to blame when trains are overcrowded or running late.
Martha in Manchester, thank you. Profits at the Royal Mail have increased fourfold during the year of the pandemic as restrictions and lockdowns led to a surge in online shopping. What is revealed pre-tax profits for the year to March hit £726 million, up from £180 million a year earlier. The company revealed it generated more cash from parcel deliveries than letters for the first time in its history. A French court has ruled that thousands of women who were given faulty breast implants, many of which later ruptured, should be given compensation. It's a landmark ruling which could pave the way for hundreds of thousands more claims from women all over the world. Knowledge of the problem first emerged in 2010. It related to breast implants offered by a French company called Poly-Implant Prothèses, or PIP. The original claim was brought by some 2,700 women, many of whom had suffered a range of diseases or abnormalities as a result of the implants. Well, I'm joined now by our health editor, Emily Morgan. Emily, this has been a really difficult journey for these women, hasn't it?
Yeah, really difficult. I'd say it's just been long and agonising, really, for them. Don't forget, many of the women will have had these implants fitted back in 2001, 2002, and it only really came to light that the silicone inside them was faulty in 2010. So that is when the legal battles started, as it were. So 11 years later, only some women are finally getting some compensation. So there's a number of women still in the UK and across the world who are still fighting. They're still trying to get compensation. I spoke to Christy Scott earlier today. She had implants from this French company, PIP. They've been removed, but she still has skin pain. She still has worries and fears for the future. And she has a case going through the courts at the moment against this German company, TÜV Rheinland, who certified the implants. And she hopes today's ruling really bodes well for her own case.
It's difficult because obviously it was a choice to have them in the first place. It's cost an awful lot for me personally. But, you know, money isn't the only thing that's important in this. You know, like I said, all of the people that have suffered have now got a lifetime of worry, really, whether there's going to be something that comes back to bite them. But I think the money goes a little way towards helping towards some of the costs we've all had to face.
And today's judgment actually only affects a small number of the women affected.
A really small number. So just 2,500 today. Around 500 of those women are British. But there's about 8,000 other people, British people, going through the courts, the French courts at the moment, to try and get their own compensation. And that number is just a drop in the ocean when you think about how many people across the world actually had these implants. Around 47,000, I think, in the UK, up to 60,000 in Latin America. They were the biggest importer of these implants from France. And across the world, maybe nearly 500,000 people had these implants. So when you think about today's ruling, it could really have a seismic impact on any future case against this German company. Now, TÜV Rheinland could appeal. It looks like they might well appeal. But I think so far today, this really is a win for all those women today.
Thanks for explaining all that, Emily. Next, the holiday industry is still largely at a standstill due to COVID restrictions in the skies, but the cruise ships are welcoming back customers, and the Virtuosa is set to become the first liner on UK seas with passengers since the pandemic began. She sets sail from Southampton tonight, heading for Dorset. Good Morning Britain's Richard Gaisford has been on board.
The cruise line business has been static. In fact, no ship has left with passengers on board from British ports for the last 15 months. I'm on board MSC's brand new ship, the Virtuosa, and take a look from the shoreline camera. You can see just how big it is. Parked up here in Southampton, 6,500 passengers it can take. But because of the COVID regulations, well, it's only going to be allowed to have 1,000 people on board. There are strict testing protocols for people getting on board. The crew themselves have been tested, have been quarantined, and they will not be going to foreign stops. People are going to be walking up and down the promenade here, looking at the British coastline for these first few cruises. This one is off on a 4-night cruise to Dorset, of all places. Portland Bill is the stop. And people are going to get a chance to have a look around what is €1 billion worth of investment.
Along with the glitz and glamour, a regular reminder that we're not sailing into normal times just yet. The last year, spent at home in the US, was the strangest in Gene Young's 20 years as a cruise director.
Well, I hope that people do see that we have changed to make sure that they're safe and that they're healthy and that we're taking care of our crew.
All the crew, Gene included, have just had to quarantine on board for 14 days in their quarters before heading back out to sea. The industry learning lessons from the nightmare scenes on the Diamond Princess and other cruise liners at the start of the pandemic that saw passengers locked up in their cabins. Having successfully sailed ships in Italian waters since August last year, MSC is now ready to welcome British guests and says there's a 365-page COVID protocol being followed on board. Well, all guests are being asked to keep masks on in public areas unless you're sat at a table having food or drink in your social bubble or in a cabin, and there's no need to wear a mask when you're outside socially distanced in the fresh air.
We have so many layers of security to stop that from happening on board of our ship.
Like many operators in an industry navigating its way out of the pandemic, it seems everything possible is now being done to ensure there will be no turning back.
Richard Gaisford reporting from Southampton there. The hunt is on for the owner of a set-for-life lottery ticket bought in Hertfordshire. The ticket bought in the Three Rivers district scooped the top prize on the 6th of May, £10,000 per month for the next 30 years. The lucky ticket holder has until the 2nd of November this year to claim their prize. And finally, it's the much-anticipated reunion fans have been waiting for, and now we've been given a glimpse of what the 6 best friends from New York are up to. It seems they made a new friend for the special episode. The trailer for the show features none other than James Corden. Here's Jonathan Brown.
The test is ready. Rachel wrote Ross a letter and demanded he read it before they got back together. How many pages was that letter? 18 pages!
Back together and back on set after 14 years apart, the Friends reunion will bring back memories and put to bed questions fans have been waiting years to be answered.
Were Ross and Rachel on a break?
Yes! A one-off episode due to air on US streaming service HBO Max will see the original cast reread famous scenes, play trivia games and reminisce.
Don't take that tone with me.
For former guest actors like Tom Conti, who played Ross's father-in-law, it's long overdue.
It'll be as if there has been no time between one and the other. I think they'll just sit back into it at the greatest of ease. They really did seem like friends.
I'd say from the looks of it, our naked buddy is moving.
Over 10 years and more than 230 episodes, the show about 6 friends in Manhattan regularly attracted more than 20 million viewers.
I went to the producer of the show I was on, and he said, that show's not going to make you a star.
The reunion hosted by James Corden will see old storylines revisited through studio interviews and some memories relived.
There will be huge chunks, I'm sure, that they don't remember at all. They'll remember all the nice bits, and they'll remember any of the bad bits, of course. You always remember the bad bits. But there were very few bad bits as far as I could see. But I think warmly, I mean, it fixed them up for life.
We became best friends.
Yeah, I'm going to cry now. For many, the revival of these on-screen friendships really is the one they've been waiting for. And there's just one more week to wait. Jonathan Brown, ITV News.
Reunions are all the rage. A reminder of our main story this lunchtime. The Prime Minister sounded optimistic this morning about England's COVID restrictions being lifted next month as surge testing gets underway in more areas. And that is it this lunchtime. Mary's here with the evening news at 6:30. The news where you are follows the national weather.